No one knew the truth about what lay behind the rusted steel door buried beneath the old government research facility. Only that for more than 60 years, it had remained sealed, welded, reinforced, untouched. If someone tried to open it, alarms would trigger through every hallway. If someone even approached without clearance, their badge would deactivate instantly. And if someone dared to ask what was inside, the only answer given was simple, cold, and unwavering. The vault is not to be opened. But here's the part that has haunted investigators, historians, and surviving personnel for decades. The vault was never meant to be found in the first place. Tonight, we're going inside the darkest story the government never intended to exist. Tonight, we unravel the mystery of the vault no one was allowed to open. Before we begin, if you're someone who lives for uncovering hidden history, forbidden files, and the truth buried beneath official silence, hit subscribe now. This is the kind of story you don't want to miss. What you're about to hear is pieced together from declassified documents, anonymous testimonies, and recovered logs. And if even half of it is true, the vault should have remained sealed forever. It begins on a fog-thick evening in the winter of 1957, deep in the forests of northern Wyoming, at the edge of a government-funded research installation known on paper as Site Echo 12. The site officially studied atmospheric physics and early high-altitude radar experimentation. Unofficially, it conducted projects so classified that even senior personnel only knew them by letter-number codes. Most of Echo 12 was above ground, a cluster of metal buildings, floodlights, antennas, and concrete bunkers. But far beneath the surface, at the end of a descending tunnel that grew colder with every step, was the vault. A chamber so secure that only 4 people in the country had full clearance. It was never labeled, never mapped, never mentioned in any facility briefing. Most workers didn't even believe it existed until the incident that forced everyone to acknowledge it. The vault itself was a steel cylinder, bolted and welded, with signs that didn't list consequences, only warnings. Restricted sealed, permanently authorized closure order 1943 do not open. Some said the vault was older than the facility. Some said it was transported there from another site. Some whispered that whatever was inside had already killed people. But no one truly knew the origin, until a series of routine tests, a failing generator, and a midnight malfunction would set in motion the discovery no one wanted. Our story follows the man at the center of it all, Dr. Adrian Mercer, a physicist who, according to surviving logs, was brilliant, stubborn, and incapable of ignoring unanswered questions. He arrived at Echo 12 on January 3, 1957. On his second day, he asked about the vault. On his third, he was told bluntly, and with a warning he would later write about in his private journal. Curiosity won't serve you here, Doctor. Pretend the vault does not exist. But Mercer was the kind of man who believed that sealed doors existed only to be opened. For weeks, he worked in the main laboratory, analyzing atmospheric anomalies detected over the region. Sudden magnetic fluctuations, unexplained drops in barometric pressure, and bursts of radio interference that didn't match any known source. One anomaly in particular repeated every 27 hours, always faint, always brief, yet strange enough to feel intentional. The pattern seemed to originate underground. Mercer asked his supervisor, Commander Elias Wright, whether the vault had any equipment that could generate such signals. Wright stiffened and gave the same answer every senior staff member repeated like a script. That vault is inert, decommissioned, irrelevant to your work. But the pattern continued, and with each repetition, the signal grew stronger. Late one evening, Mercer and another researcher, Dr. Helen Rowe, ran an unauthorized scan through the lower levels. The readings were unmistakable. The signals were coming directly from the vault. Rowe urged Mercer to drop it, to walk away. She wasn't like him. She understood what it meant when something was sealed by an order signed during the war. But Mercer insisted it meant the opposite. Something in there is active. Something they're ignoring. Something we need to understand. 3 days later, the power failure happened. An unexpected outage hit the lower levels. Lights flickered. Alarms chirped. Backup generators struggled to activate. In the disorienting darkness, Mercer made a decision whose consequences would stretch far beyond Echo 12. He grabbed Rose's arm and whispered, "If the vault is ever going to be vulnerable, it's right now." They hurried down the lower corridor, past rows of sealed doors and warning signs, until they reached the ramp leading to the vault chamber. For the first time, the steel door wasn't silent. It was humming, faintly, softly, like something inside was vibrating. A seam of pale blue light flickered around its edges. Ro froze. "Adrian, something's wrong. That vault isn't supposed to have power." He approached anyway. The vault's locking bolts, which normally glowed red, were dark. The weld seams, which had been perfectly solid, now had fractures no one could explain. The reinforced hinges had heat distortion marks. Something was happening from the inside. For a moment, they simply stared at it, listening. The humming grew louder. The light pulsed. And then, just as Ro reached for Mercer's coat to pull him away, a single, sharp metallic clink echoed through the room. One of the internal locking bolts retracted. Not by force, but mechanically, like someone or something inside was unlocking the door. Before either of them could react, alarms blared through the hallway. Floodlights snapped on. Guards swarmed the lower level. Mercer and Ro were dragged away, interrogated separately, and confined to quarters. The incident was labeled a breach attempt, though both insisted they touched nothing. Commander Wright personally visited Mercer's temporary holding room. His normally calm face was pale with fear, real fear, not anger. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "That door wasn't opened from the outside." Mercer swallowed. "I know." Wright leaned closer. "Because whatever is in that vault wasn't created here. It was brought here, buried here, and sealed under orders never to be questioned, never to be studied, never to be acknowledged. Do you understand me?" But Mercer didn't understand. Not yet. 2 nights later, everything would change. At 2:14 a.m., a facility-wide lockdown triggered, followed by a message broadcast on internal speakers. "Containment breach in sublevel 4. All personnel to evacuation points." This is not a drill. Mercer, still confined, was escorted out immediately. But before being led up the main stairwell, he saw something that would haunt him. The lower corridor flooding with cold mist, rolling out from the direction of the vault. Not smoke, not steam. Mist, as if the temperature inside the vault had dropped sharply, unnaturally fast. One of the guards muttered under his breath, "It's happening again." Mercer asked what he meant, but the guard refused to speak. Most personnel were evacuated to the surface, but Commander Wright and a hand-picked crisis team descended to sublevel 4. Mercer, brilliant, stubborn, fearless Mercer, escaped supervision by slipping into a maintenance shaft in the confusion. It was reckless, perhaps even suicidal, but he needed to know what was happening. The alarms echoed as he moved through cramped metal tunnels. Radio traffic from the crisis team crackled intermittently. Approaching the vault, temperature dropping, visual distortion in the air. "Commander, something is moving inside." Mercer froze. Something was moving inside. When he reached the end of the tunnel, he peered through a grated maintenance vent overlooking the vault chamber. And what he saw defied every known law of physics he had ever studied. The vault door, 4 feet thick, reinforced, welded shut for decades, was open, bent outward as though pushed from within. Cold fog drifted across the floor. Lights flickered violently. The crisis team stood in a semicircle around the doorway, weapons drawn, beams of flashlight trembling. From his vantage point, Mercer could see only darkness beyond the opening. But something inside was emitting a low resonance, like a distant wind moving through hollow metal. Then came a sound Mercer would later describe in his final written note as impossibly familiar and unimaginably wrong. A single, slow inhale, as though something was breathing. Commander Wright stepped forward cautiously. His voice was steadier than his hands. "We don't want hostility. Identify yourself." Silence. Then another breath. Closer. Rose's voice echoed faintly from behind Mercer. She had followed him through the shaft, unwilling to leave him alone. "Adrian, we need to go." Now. But he couldn't look away. A shape began to emerge from the vault. Not fully seen, only sensed. The air shimmered around it as heat distortion inverted into cold. The lights dimmed as it moved. Frost crept across the floor tiles. Guards shouted warnings. Footsteps scrambled. Someone screamed. And then the recording cut off. Every radio, every monitor, every feed from sublevel 4 went dead simultaneously. By the time reinforcements reached the lower chamber, the entity or phenomenon or whatever had been inside the vault was gone. The vault door lay on the floor. The crisis team was unconscious, scattered, frostbitten but alive. Commander Wright was missing, and every instrument in the chamber had been fried useless. Mercer and Rowe were discovered hiding in the shaft, escorted out, and flown to separate facilities within 24 hours. Echo 12 was shut down. The vault chamber was sealed again, this time filled with concrete, steel, and sensors wired directly to Washington. What happened inside that vault was never spoken of publicly. No entity was ever recovered. No clear explanation was ever given. But some clues survived in scattered documents. A 1943 memorandum referencing an anomalous artifact recovered from a crash site in the Nevada desert, transported under the highest secrecy. A handwritten note from a scientist who worked on the original containment stating, "Do not expose to electromagnetic fields. Responds unpredictably." A classified transcript describing early tests where the artifact emitted sounds resembling human respiration. And a final entry from Mercer's journal before he disappeared years later. What we opened was not meant for our world. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a creature. It was something waiting. And all we did was wake it up. To this day, the government denies that Echo 12 ever existed. No official records describe the vault. No public reference acknowledges the anomaly. But satellite imagery from the forest shows a massive underground structure. Overgrown, decaying, and still guarded by sensors that receive power from an unknown source. And on cold nights, hikers have reported hearing a low hum beneath the earth, repeating every 27 hours. Just like before, whatever was inside the vault, it was never about keeping us out. It was about keeping it in. And if the hum is growing stronger again, it may mean the vault wasn't a prison. It was a warning we no longer have the power to enforce.